Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Today we have Jeromes Dream. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having us, friend.
Thanks for having us.
So, first thing, I'm usually way more comfortable on the other side of the camera, but I feel like I have to do this interview because of our history.
Yeah.
My old band, Usurp, we did a record together, we toured, so here we are 23 years later.
Is it that long?
Yeah, I think so.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
That's wild.
Yeah, I've seen you guys twice now since you guys have reformed, and both times it's like, I enjoy it, it's great, but it's like weird for me to see it because it's like 23 years ago, but it feels like 2 years.
Right.
And then at the same time, I'm surrounded by like, kids that were probably not even born, like
Right.
losing their shit, like loving it.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
so I guess the first question is, so how do we get to this point? How did a hardcore band from the late 90s reunite and become a band again 20 years later?
JD was a band from 97 to 2001. And so between 2001 and I guess it was 2017 when we decided to get on a phone call together. Jeff and I have kept in touch sporadically throughout the years. And I guess in 2017, I thought, well, why don't we try to find Nick and get on a call with him because it marked the 20th anniversary of us starting the band. And so one thing led to another. We decided to make a record. Long story short, we made the record. We toured a lot after that. And that kind of jump-started the feeling of just being in a band together and kind of returning to this, kind of getting back to basics, kind of returning to our punk roots and sensibilities as JD. And one thing led to another, and before we knew it, this thing just kind of evolved very quickly. It kind of accelerated once we started playing a lot. Mm-hmm. Here we are now in another chapter of the band where Nick is no longer playing with us, but our dear friend Sean has joined, and now we're about to embark on a full tour after making this new record together as a three-piece in this new iteration. So yeah, it's hard to truncate it after 20 years, but it feels really good to get back to this, It's cool.
still sounds very much like Jerome's Dream, but like more mature and like kind of slightly grown up, which is an obvious thing because we are older. But I've always just kind of wondered if, like, when you guys got back together, was there a thought process of like changing the style a little bit, or are you guys still passionate about this style of hardcore?
In the time between the first run of JD and now, I didn't really pay attention to that world at all. I didn't know who Touche or More were when we got back together, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But now when we play, I'm watching the bands. I want to know who they are and meet them and listen to their music. And you know, we played with a lot of great bands last night. Nerver and Meth and Crowning. Lots of really good bands last night. Black Matter Device. You know, I'm missing a slew of them, but so yeah, we listen to this kind of music still. Loma Prieta, if you haven't heard of them.
I guess I just think of it like personally, like I'm like, all right, if Usurp played a show, like I'm not that 20-year-old kid. Like if I probably read those lyrics, I'll probably be really embarrassed. But like, I guess is there ever just like a sense of like not being able to connect to the style of music that you're known for, or is it just like a natural kind of just back into it type of thing?
Oh, it's right back into it. I mean, that's part of our DNA, I think. You know, there's nothing I would rather be doing than this, other than maybe playing catch with my son. But you know, this is my lifeblood. This is the thing that makes life feel complete to me. I'll let these guys talk about it, but
I think what it comes down to, for me personally, is you know, like hardcore and punk, it's such a formative time when you're young, right? And I think from an expressive standpoint, musically, this is kind of all we know in terms of what really serves as a platform to just be us, be who we are, and to be able to channel what we feel into something productive. And, you know, when it comes to connecting with the music, I think the one thing that we kind of always had to our advantage was there was no hindrance between the connectivity of the music and us playing it. It was just always, and sure, maybe when we were younger, we had crummy equipment and we couldn't really play that well, but it didn't matter, and it still doesn't matter. If you're a young kid and you're just starting, but you feel the need to like express yourself through music, just figure it out and you will find your way, you know? Because like a lot of kids, you know, they'll DM us and they'll be like, you know, what pedals does Sean use, or what microphone is Jeff using, or how does he scream that way? And I always say he screams that way because it's him, and Sean sounds the way he sounds because it's Sean. And like you could try to replicate sounds and you can try to be something, but it's so much more important to just let it be you. So while we've evolved, I think, you know, as musicians, I don't know, maybe, debatable. But I think when you become older and you have a little bit of experience under your belt, it just becomes the next iteration of whatever it is that you're doing. And I think for all of us, you know, punk in general, just the idea or the philosophy of punk or hardcore, it's you know, it's like Jeff said, it's kind of in our DNA. So I don't know. It's just what we are, or what we know at least how to do and how to do it together, and it just seems to work dynamically with the three of us. And
totally,
yeah.
term screamo. I always try to think back to this. I don't remember it being called that when we were like all playing shows and stuff. Do you remember the first time you heard the term screamo?
I don't remember. Somewhere on the internet.
But it was after the fact, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It all sort of blends together. There were a lot of terms flying around, so it's hard to remember. I mean, the one that always sticks out in my head is emo violence, right? Like an offshoot of power violence. And
Well, when did you hear? Well, what do you know about scramz? Because
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
I
going to
feel
get
like
up
our
and leave
friend-
this conversation now.
There's a lot of rumors.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, screamo I think like came up at some point, but what I
around.
still have yet to fully confirm, but maybe Sean could speak
Why
to
do you
it.
think
Is
Sean knows what it is?
well, I think one of our friends possibly coined the term scramz, so it went from like screamo to scramz, right?
Where did the Z bothers me. I
know.
can't take it seriously
bothers
with the
me
Z.
too.
Yeah.
It feels like both terms were sort of coined by people who were not championing that kind of music. You know what I mean? Like I remember the first time I heard someone say screamo, it was more like a bro-y hardcore guy talking about music that he didn't like.
Yeah.
And it was strange to me when, 5 or 10 years after that, I started knowing bands that self-described as being screamo. I was always kind of like, that feels like an off-limits term that you would only use to diss someone. But I get that. I mean, the music that I was really drawn in by, like in the mid to late '90s, was all like hardcore music that didn't fit neatly into the genre, and I think that there was, someone had a necessity to try and figure out where to place that, and it was kind of called modern hardcore, or it was called emo violence, or whatever it was called back then. And
I mean, that
for
makes
some
sense.
reason, I think that screamo is a grabbier, stupider
Yeah.
way of, talking about it, and then,
I mean, that's true. I think when you're not in one lane, like in one particular lane as a band, or when it's harder to define, the subgenre titles get a little bit more weird and like kind of absurd,
Yeah.
because it's like the melding of like words and like funny. I don't know, but
I mean, why did Skronk never take off, Are you aware of the subgenre Skronk?
No,
is that-
what is that? Can you give us a lesson?
I think that Jeromes Dream, early Jeromes Dream, very much fits into the Skronk.
Skronk?
Yeah.
Skronk.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go on Urban Dictionary, man. I don't know.
You're just gonna leave us?
Yeah.
You're gonna leave us hanging?
I'm gonna leave this whole audience hanging. Go
Dude.
figure it.
yeah,
Someone
go
tell
Google-
me out
go
what
Google
Skronk
Google
is.
Skronk.
Email me.
Yeah, because I can always remember, like, at the time, like, how do you describe Seisha? Like, that band made no sense to me. Like, I love them, but like, I don't know how you would describe them or put them in a category.
Well, again, like they're a prime example of one of those bands from back then. I mean, I feel the same way about Usurp. Like, what were you guys? Like, it was
Right.
so fucked up because it's like insane grind. You were using a MIDI controller or some kind of synthesizer. You ended up with two singers.
Well, everyone did except for you guys.
Yeah.
I think.
But that's kind of what was so cool about the weirdo bands back then, whether it was Usurp, Seisha, or whoever else. We were kids who were just trying to make for the sake of making and letting it be what it was to become, but not trying to stay in a particular lane or be a particular way, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of bands like ours got docked points for doing something different, which is kind of funny because it's like, to me, punk rock is about being different and letting yourself express what you want, the way you want, how you want, and not give a shit. And for some reason, when you're kind of pushing the envelope, you kind of get pushed as an outcast. And I feel like Usurp or Seisha or even Orchid or Page 99, I felt like these bands were like the outcasts of punk back then. People didn't really know what they were, or like what was going through our minds. And so to think now how it's become sort of this much more familiar genre, screamo, and younger punks are taking to it with much more like, oh yeah, it's screamo, you know. It's like fascinating what 20 years can do to a weird esoteric slice of punk, you know.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming much more a part of the landscape at large, which is awesome.
But yeah, I love that Seisha's back, and I love that they're getting to do that, you know, that they deserve from you guys too. I mean, last night I had the biggest crowd I've ever seen you guys play in front of, and it was fantastic. So keep doing
it
what
was
you're
fun.
doing.
It was
Yeah,
fun.
felt good.
It's great.
Sweaty and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
thanks,
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
to see you again.
You too.